Have you ever imagined what a 12-year-old girl could go through that would change her life forever? A seemingly peaceful family, a respected stepfather, but hidden beneath it all is a dark secret no one could have foreseen. When the young girl collapsed in class, the truth began to unravel, and what happened next will leave you in shock. What really happened to her? Will justice be served? Stay tuned until the end to uncover the unexpected truth. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more emotional stories ahead. In a quiet town where life seemed peaceful and predictable, a young girl named Emily lived with her mother Lisa and her stepfather Mark. Emily was only 12, but she had already experienced more hardships than most children her age. After her father passed away when she was just a baby, her mother had struggled to provide for her. Eventually, Lisa met Mark, a successful businessman who appeared to be kind and responsible. He provided financial stability and brought a sense of security to their home. At first, life with Mark seemed perfect. He took them on trips, bought Emily gifts, and always spoke to her in a gentle voice. Lisa was grateful, believing she had found a man who would take care of them both. Emily, however, sensed something was off. It started with small things. Mark would stare at her for a little too long, make comments that felt strange even though they were disguised as compliments. She convinced herself she was imagining things, not wanting to upset her mother. She loved her mom and knew how much she had struggled before Mark came into their lives. Over time, however, the unease grew. Mark began to find excuses to be alone with her. He volunteered to help with her homework, stayed home when her mother went out for errands, and even suggested Lisa take more shifts at work to bring in extra money. Lisa thought Mark was just being supportive, a father figure Emily needed. But Emily knew something was wrong. One evening while Lisa was working late, Mark entered Emily's room with a smile that sent chills down her spine. He sat next to her on the bed, his hand brushing against hers as he spoke in a soft voice. "You know you are very special to me, Emily." She froze, her instincts screaming for her to get away, but she forced a smile and nodded, pretending to be tired so he would leave. He hesitated before standing up, giving her one last unsettling look before leaving the room. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She wanted to tell her mother, but she didn't know how. Would she even believe her? Mark was always so charming in front of others. Days passed and Mark's behavior became more aggressive. He began calling Emily into his office, shutting the door behind her, and making excuses to touch her shoulder or brush her hair. She avoided him as much as possible, but one day she couldn't escape. Lisa had gone to visit a sick relative, leaving Emily alone with Mark for the entire weekend. Fear gripped her as he locked the door to the house and turned to her with a look she had never seen before. Her heart pounded as he stepped closer, trapping her between the couch and the wall. "No one is here to interrupt us, Emily." He whispered, his voice calm, but filled with something sinister. She could barely breathe, her entire body frozen in terror. What happened that weekend would change Emily's life forever. She stopped speaking, as much avoided eye contact, and lost interest in everything she once loved. Lisa noticed the change, but assumed Emily was just going through a phase. It wasn't until months later, when Emily fainted in school, that the truth began to unravel. The school nurse examined her and found something alarming. Emily was showing signs of severe stress, malnutrition, and something else that no one expected. They called Lisa, immediately urging her to take Emily to a doctor. Lisa was in shock when the doctor revealed the results. Emily was pregnant. Lisa's heart shattered as she turned to her daughter, demanding an explanation. Emily broke down sobbing, unable to say the words, but Lisa already knew. The man she had trusted, the man she thought had saved them, had destroyed their lives instead. Lisa felt her entire world collapse around her. She had been blind, too trusting, too willing to believe that Mark was the man he pretended to be. But the nightmare was far from over. When Lisa confronted Mark, his demeanor changed instantly. He denied everything, accused Emily of lying, and tried to manipulate Lisa into believing that Emily was making up stories for attention. Lisa, however, saw through his lies. She took Emily's hand and walked out of the house, determined to seek justice. She went straight to the police, filed a report, and refused to be silenced, despite the pressure from Mark's family and friends. The case gained attention in the small town as people took sides. Some believed Lisa and Emily, while others defended Mark, saying he was too good of a man to do something so horrific. The trial was long and painful, with Emily having to relive her trauma again and again, but she stood strong with her mother by her side. In the end, the evidence was undeniable. Mark was found guilty, sentenced to prison, where he could never hurt anyone again. But for Emily and Lisa, the journey to healing had only just begun. Emily faced years of therapy and support to rebuild her sense of self. Lisa vowed never to let anyone hurt her daughter again. Their story became a powerful message about trust, awareness, and the strength of a mother's love. It showed the importance of listening to children, of believing them when they say something is wrong. What do you think about Emily's story? Do you believe justice was truly served? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that need to be heard. As the days passed after Lisa took Emily away from the house they once called home, Emily remained silent, withdrawn into herself, as if she were trapped in a place no one could reach. Lisa tried everything to bring her daughter back to the way she was before, but the trauma had built an invisible wall between them. Emily would stare at the walls for hours, barely speaking, barely eating, lost in a world of her own pain. Lisa felt helpless, watching her daughter slip further away. Determined to help Emily heal, Lisa sought professional help. She took her to a therapist who specialized in trauma cases, hoping that someone trained in understanding pain could help where she could not. At first, Emily refused to speak. She would sit in the therapy room, arms crossed, staring at the floor, refusing to acknowledge the gentle voice asking her questions. Lisa sat outside the room, praying, hoping that something would change. Weeks passed and it seemed hopeless, but then one day during a session, something shifted. Emily picked up a piece of paper from the table in front of her and began to draw. At first, it was just scribbles, nothing coherent, but over time, shapes began to form. She drew a house, then a girl standing alone, then a shadow looming behind her. The therapist recognized this as a breakthrough, a way for Emily to communicate without words. Slowly through art, she began to release the emotions she had buried so deeply. Lisa was relieved, but knew this was only the beginning of a long journey. Meanwhile, the legal battle against Mark had only just begun. The case was gaining attention in the local news, stirring up controversy in their small town. Some people whispered that Lisa was lying, that she was trying to ruin an innocent man's life. Others believed her and stood by her, offering support. But the pressure was immense. Mark's lawyers were ruthless, determined to paint Lisa as a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge. They claimed that Emily was confused, that she was being manipulated by her mother. Lisa refused to be intimidated. She gathered every piece of evidence, every medical report, every statement from the school counselor who had first raised concerns about Emily's condition. The trial date was set, and as the day approached, Lisa could feel the weight of what was to come pressing down on her. She worried most about Emily, about how she would handle being in the same room as the man who had destroyed her childhood. When the trial began, the courtroom was filled with tension. Mark sat on one side, his expression calm, as if he had nothing to hide. Lisa sat beside Emily, holding her hand tightly, offering silent reassurance. The prosecution presented the case, detailing the abuse, the medical reports, the emotional scars that Emily now carried. Then came the hardest part: Emily had to testify. The room fell silent as she stepped up to the witness stand. Lisa held her breath, watching as her daughter sat down, her small hands gripping the edge of the chair. The judge spoke to her, gently asking if she was ready. Emily took a deep breath and nodded. Her voice was soft, at first hesitant, but as she spoke, the words became stronger. She described what had happened, how she had felt the fear, the helplessness. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. Mark's lawyer tried to discredit her, tried to twist her words, but Emily did not waver. She looked directly at her stepfather, and for the first time in months, she did not feel small. She saw the way his eyes flickered with unease, and she knew she was no longer under his control. Lisa watched with tears in her eyes as her daughter stood up to the man who had tried to take everything from her. As the trial continued, more evidence was presented, witnesses spoke, and Mark's carefully crafted image began to crack. The once charming and respected businessman was now exposed for what he truly was. The jury listened carefully, weighing every piece of information. Lisa prayed that justice would be served, that her daughter would not have to carry this pain alone, without recognition of the truth. Finally, after weeks of testimonies and deliberation, the verdict was ready. The courtroom was silent as the judge prepared to speak. Lisa held Emily's hand tighter, her heart pounding in her chest. She could see Mark sitting still, his face unreadable. Then the words were spoken: guilty. Lisa felt a rush of emotions, relief, sadness, anger. But most of all, she felt the weight that had been crushing her slowly start to lift. Emily looked up at her mother, her eyes filled with something that had been missing for a long time: hope. Mark was sentenced to prison, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Lisa and Emily could breathe again. But the journey was not over. Healing would take time. Rebuilding trust in the world would take time. Lisa vowed to stand by her daughter every step of the way, ensuring that Emily would never feel alone again. Their story did not end with the verdict. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. One where they could move forward, where Emily could dream again without fear. Lisa knew that the past would always be a part of them, but it would no longer define them. What do you think of Emily's story? Do you believe justice was truly served? Let us know your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that need to be heard. As the days turned into weeks following the trial, Emily and Lisa began the slow and difficult journey toward healing. Emily was free from the shadow of her past, but the scars remained buried deep within her. Lisa knew that while the court had given them justice, true healing would take much longer. She dedicated herself to ensuring that Emily felt safe every moment of every day. She enrolled her in therapy, encouraged her to write in a journal, and tried to bring little moments of joy into her life. At first, Emily struggled to adjust to the idea that she was no longer in danger. Every time she heard a deep voice that sounded remotely like Mark's, she would flinch. Every time someone stood too close, she would instinctively move away. Lisa saw these reactions and her heart ached, knowing that it would take time for her daughter to feel normal again. One afternoon, Lisa decided they needed a change of scenery. She took Emily to a quiet park, one they had never visited before. At first, Emily was hesitant, staying close to her mother, constantly scanning her surroundings. But then a golden retriever ran up to her, wagging its tail, eyes full of warmth and curiosity. Emily froze for a moment, then hesitantly reached out to pet the dog. It was the first time Lisa had seen a genuine smile on her daughter's face in months. They began visiting the park more often, and Lisa decided to get Emily a dog of her own, a gentle Labrador named Buddy. The bond between them grew quickly. Buddy gave Emily a sense of comfort that words never could. She began to speak more, laugh, more, even play outside again. Lisa watched as her daughter slowly rediscovered the world in small, safe steps. Meanwhile, Lisa faced her own challenges. The whispers in the community had not disappeared. Some people still questioned whether she had done the right thing by taking Mark to court. Others believed she should have handled things privately to avoid the shame it brought upon their family. Lisa ignored them, choosing instead to focus on what truly mattered: Emily's well-being. One day, Emily asked if they could visit the beach, a place they used to love, before everything happened. Lisa agreed, and they took a short trip to the coast. As they walked along the shore, Emily hesitated, then turned to her mother. "Mom, do you think I will ever be normal again?" Lisa felt a lump in her throat. She knelt beside Emily, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You are not broken, Emily. You are strong and brave. What happened to you does not define you. You define yourself." Emily nodded, but Lisa could see the uncertainty in her eyes. They sat by the waves for hours, letting the ocean carry away the weight of their thoughts. That night, Emily slept peacefully for the first time in years. As time passed, she slowly started to build a new life. She returned to school with Lisa's support, and though it was difficult, she worked hard to regain her confidence. Lisa continued her own journey of healing too. She joined a support group for survivors and their families, sharing her experiences with others who had faced similar pain. Years later, Emily stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people, her hands gripping a speech she had written. She had been invited to speak at an event raising awareness for survivors of abuse. As she looked out into the audience, she saw Lisa sitting in the front row, eyes full of pride. Taking a deep breath, she began. "I once thought my life was over, that I would never feel whole again. But I was wrong. I found strength in my mother and the people who believed in me, in the hope that no matter how broken I felt, I could rebuild myself. If you are listening to this and you have ever felt like I did, please know that you are not alone. You are not what happened to you. You are so much more." The audience erupted in applause, but Emily's eyes remained on her mother. Lisa smiled through her tears, knowing that this moment was proof of everything they had fought for. The lesson in this story is that healing is not about forgetting, but about finding the strength to move forward. No one's pain should ever be silenced, and no one should ever have to carry their burden alone. What do you think about Emily's journey? Could she have found justice without going through the legal battle? What would you have done in her situation? Let us know your thoughts and do not forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories that must be told.